So my laptop is the battery is dead, and so I unplugged it to move it from one side of the room to this side, and then it took quite some time for it to actually get up and going. So I humbly apologize for being so late, but I am here, and I see that the chat section has already started. Why did it say my stream health is really bad? Unsupported resolution. Can you guys see me okay? Not supported for this configuration. Interesting. Yeah, it's got kind of a weird, I'm using something I've used all the time. Interesting. All right, so I'm going to go and get started here. So hi, Janet is here. For those of you who have met her, Janet is our moderator for this live chat. So she will make sure that she keeps the trolls out. Well, they'll probably get in, but she'll just knock them back under the bridge. All right, James. Hi, James. Let's see, just saying hi to Janet. I'm in. Hi, I don't know that I found you here, Janet. Oh, okay. Everybody's just kind of chatting. Yes, you were here Thursday, James, for the unexpected event. Let's see, YouTube chat never seems to show the correct participant count. Yeah, I'm not sure that it really does. You're right. According to this, it says 0 are watching. Is that the case? See. Are you guys seeing this here, or is this? Let me know. I don't know what's going on here. So now I am. Can you guys just let me know if everything looks okay? Because it doesn't look like it's streaming properly. So I don't know what's going on here. Got the end of the stream. Let's see. Hello, everybody's just kind of saying hi there. Stumbled across you when searching the net for breathing tips. Oh, hi. Is it Ian? Ian, you know, there are different ways of pronouncing it. So hello, nice of you to join us if this is your first live stream. So hello, and let's see, Janet gets short, spontaneous Q&A. Okay, great. We'll hopefully meet Karen soon. Yeah, I'm here. Hopefully you guys can see me. We see and hear you. Oh, good. Okay, I'm just kind of scrolling through all of the comments here. Feels so new. This is pretty casual here, Ian. Just so you know, we just I don't really have a teaching component when I come on because I only do this once a month. So I just kind of jump right into your questions and try to help you with some answers there. So I apologize again. I'm not normally late like this. Sometimes I'm pushing it, but not normally this late. I am ordering a new battery right after I get off of here. So actually, let's see. I scrolled down and now it looks like it's doing things. Oh, Ian, you're a fellow Canadian. So I don't know if you know that about me, but I'm from Ontario as well, so I know where Barrie is. My brother lived in Barrie for a while. Yeah, so a fellow Canadian, but I live in outside of Boston. So I've been living here for how many years now? Let's see, 17 years. Wow. All right, time flies. Justin Lack, you're in Houston. Yeah, let each other know where you're from. Let me know where you're from. It's good to know where everybody is. So any questions today, guys? I've got it on live chat, so hopefully everybody's questions are coming through, and I'm prepared to take a little bit of time today to answer them. So let me know what your burning questions are. So earlier today, I recorded a video on English diction for non-native speakers. So that's going to be coming out in the next day or two. And then I'm going to be posting a video in the next week, sometime in the next week, on the topic of glottal compression. And let me know what you guys would like to learn more about too. And I'll make sure that I try to get some videos out in the next little while now that I think I have my camera mic stuff worked out. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to probably put a poll up here in YouTube. So if you look in the community section, I'm going to be putting a poll up for some ideas from you guys. So let me know. I have some questions for you. Yes, Justin, let me know what they are. Just go ahead and post them in there, and I will answer as soon as possible. I needed that video. Diction is a big issue for me. Is English not your first language? Because this is specifically geared toward non-native English speakers and some of the common pitfalls that they struggle with. So especially I somehow thought you maybe in the UK as I am. Oh, your husband is this. Janet, your husband's the same. All right, yeah. Justin, do you have questions? You're non-native. Okay. Yeah. Let me know, guys. Drink that water. Hydrate. Let's see. Memoirs. You're from Memoirs of an Imperfect Baritone. Oh, I remember you. You've come on the live stream before too, haven't you, Memoirs? Yes, Welsh background, but nope. All right, guys, let me know what your questions are. So I feel kind of weird just sort of sitting here not really having questions to answer. So just throw them out, and then I will do my best to answer them. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. I know sometimes I can get kind of detail oriented. It's a good thing and a bad thing apparently in my life. So yeah, let's see. Can you talk a little bit about singing natural vowel sounds? Sure, that's good. So I know, James, I know you, and I worked with you privately as well as in the Singwise Academy. So I have an idea, I think, of what you're trying to say here. So when it comes to that natural vowel sounds, I think oftentimes what happens is when we're singing, we do this little singerese thing, right? Where we kind of have our own singing language and how we pronounce our vowels, and we add these little affectations to our singing. And as a result, what happens is sometimes the vowels get kind of distorted and they get a little too far from their speech qualities. And then, especially when we're moving into like a falsetto kind of sound, when we move into like a hoot or whoop timbre, the vowel can get really distorted sounding, and that's when we no longer sound like we're kind of mixing the voice and that sort of thing. So, if a mixed voice quality and sort of natural, as in like speech-like qualities, are important to you throughout your scale, then just being mindful sometimes of just the way that you're pronouncing your vowels. Like for me, I will take a moment to kind of talk through the lyrics of the vocal phrase, speak it just in normal speech inflection range as I normally would, get a feel for how I pronounce those particular vowel sounds. And then I might move up the scale and I might go up to here and I might talk like this. And I'm still trying to focus on keeping the vowels very speech-like. And paying attention to that, I think, is like the biggest thing that you have to focus on, because oftentimes singers just sort of unwittingly change their vowels. And yes, we do make some slight adjustments to our vowels for pitch and for dynamics as well, and also sometimes just for style, and that's fine. But I think if we go back to speech and we remember that the singing voice is not a completely separate thing from the speaking voice, and that singing is built on speech, on the phonemic. Oh, just started pouring rain. On the sorry, so ADD apparently. It's built on like the principles, the same principles of speech. And remembering that, I think, is really going to help us in our singing if our aim is to try to sound more natural. So I would just let that be our focus, is really think about, how am I singing this vowel? Does it feel like it's sitting in the same place as my speech vowels do? And obviously, again, there are going to be slight adjustments, slight differences when we're in a different part of a range and a different register, and that's okay. But I think the goal ultimately for singers is to create this sort of auditory illusion that everything is kind of placed, so to speak, in the same place. It's all kind of sitting in the same pocket, I guess you can think. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to be creative with our vowels. I'm not talking about that. But learning to be able to get more natural vowels, I think, if we just go back to speech, that takes us really, really far. Hope that helps. Talk about, okay, Justin, my question is, how can I avoid being breathy in my mix? So breathiness is a combination of, it's a symptom, I'd say, and it's a symptom of a combination of things. So when we're breathy, it's because the vocal folds are a little bit apart, and the breathiness that we hear is that sound of turbulent airflow through the vocal tract. That's what causes it. However, behind that, there are technical challenges that can cause breathiness. Oftentimes it's related to how we're managing our breath. So we are either under supporting, we'll say, or over supporting. If we over support, we can actually cause the vocal folds to sort of blow apart. A really fun experiment that you can try, it's really cool, if you have time to do this, and of course I'm not prepared to do it today. Israel, can you please ask everybody to be quiet?
Okay. Also, it's soaking outside.
I saw that.
We need to find rain.
Can you ask everybody to quiet down, please? Thank you.
Quiet down.
Sorry. Trying to like balance mommy and singing teacher, my two professional lives and my personal life. All right. Okay. So yes. So if you do this experiment, you lay out a bunch of drinking straws, all like lined up like a bunch of logs kind of attached to each other, sitting there like a little log cabin on the table, and you take 2 tin cans, like just soda cans if you have any of them, empty ones, and you place them together just a little bit apart, and you take another straw and you blow between those two, right? If we have the right amount of air, what happens is the cans actually, they don't go, you think that they would go apart, right? You're blowing air, right? And you're thinking that the air is going to cause them to separate. But in actuality, what happens is they actually get drawn together, right? And so as air comes through the vocal folds, the tendency, assuming that we're not blowing too much air or too little air, if we get that balance right, then the vocal folds naturally just come together. That's what they want to do. So you have to look at how you're managing your breath. I would just focus on things like straw work will really be beneficial. So taking a straw and sticking it about a half an inch into not a full glass of water, something that's, like maybe a third a glass, depending on how large the glass is, sticking it in there and phonating, singing scales and sirens and what have you into the straw, not going through your nose, all through the mouth, and watching the bubbles, watching the size of the bubbles, how consistent are the size of the bubbles, how consistently do those bubbles come. And that may help you see whether or not you're actually getting consistent airflow. And it will also help you try to regulate that airflow a little bit more. And then you can try to transfer that same skill from the straw to your singing. It's kind of a step-by-step thing. If you want to, I have a video on the topic of straw phonation. I show you kind of how I go from like the water to not the water to singing a vowel. I don't know if that made any sense there. So yeah, there's that, and there's also, you're saying in the mix. So the mix is kind of the funky area where we need to start being able to let the vocal folds spin a little bit without completely losing the compression. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we do is we tend to we tend to lose the compression in our sound as we go through here. Or we tend to do the opposite, and it sounds like you're not doing the opposite, but the other opposite tendency is for us to really grip and really weigh down the voice excessively as we move higher, and then we get kind of a flip into a falsetto or head voice and what have you. So I think the key with breathy singing, I do have a video on eliminating breathiness, and I don't think I ever posted the second video on the series, but I have a number of exercises that you can use that can help you with eliminating some of the breathiness. But it's really all about balance. If you're breathy, there's some sort of imbalance, and you just need to figure out that balance. Straw work, again, I think is a good way of learning to be able to get consistent airflow, learning to be able to find the right kind of compression, not too much, not too little. And it kind of, we'll say Ingo Tietze talks about it squaring up the vocal folds when you're phonating through a straw like that, which means that you're not using like the thin edges of falsetto or the really, really bulky, heavy, muscular parts of, we'll say, chest voice. And then you find just a nice middle kind of weight, which is what you want ideally. So I'm just sorry that I hope that hopefully that kind of clears things up a little bit, and just let me know, and let me know if you have more questions about this, and I'll try to help you. Oh, I sing rock, Billy Joel. All right, good. Because when I ascend in pitch, I leak more air and my vocal cords want to lose connection. Exactly. So I always go back to that exercise. I don't know why this is popping up. Sorry, weird things are going on today with my laptop and my, my connection here. So that exercise where you do the that energized hum where it's almost like, you know, you've seen something good or smelled something really good. Mmm, mmm. That is the kind of compression that you need. No more, no less. Mm, mm, If you do that on like a staccato, So it's not overly, you're not going, You're not squeezing from the throat. You're getting this feeling of the hum being kind of here. Mm, 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 Got vocal fry today. As opposed to the feeling of the work being out of the throat. And when you start to get that feeling of the hum being sort of here instead of here, you've probably found a really nice balance. And then you could take that that's all you need. And then when you start to transition past your break, if you're still going into the sound, you're going to get a different kind of compression, but it's going to remain, the vocal folds are going to remain together. The compression changes somewhat, but you can create that illusion that everything is exactly the same. But oftentimes what happens is it's the singer loses the compression, and sometimes it's because of the breath and how the breath is being managed. As we go up higher in the scale, oftentimes singers want to push and dig in more, and that can actually have that effect of the tin cans being kind of blown apart instead of being sucked together. So yeah, it's hard to know without really hearing you sing what's going on, but I suspect that might just be the case, is that you just need to figure out that balance, and you need to be able to try the getting that into your coordination up higher, instead of a which is what a lot of singers want to do, is they want to add that kind of almost like an H in front of the onset before they start the sound. Let's see, memoirs. My tongue won't stop being tense above C4. Do you have any tips? Yeah, you know, tongue root, like tongue tension, tongue root tension, base of the tongue. Tensions there are really, really common. Some teachers will tell you that it's because the breath is not being managed effectively. And I think that's sometimes the case, but I think sometimes some of us, we just hold tension there all the time. I hold tension in my tongue, hold tension in my jaw all day long, all night long. So there's always that tension there that's kind of, to me, a separate thing from singing sometimes. Um, but you're saying here it's specific to, you know, middle C and up. And so I have several videos on this topic of tongue tension, and you can, you know, retraining the tongue root, especially because I don't know the nature of your tongue tension. Sometimes it's just the tongue tenses, sometimes it retracts and flattens, sometimes it's more the tongue root, sometimes it's the base of the tongue. So I would encourage you to, first of all, sing in front of a mirror, even just a hand mirror or a wall mirror, and watch the behavior of your tongue. Is it dipping and forming like a little trough down the center? Is it a little bit of that can be normal depending on your tongue, the size of your tongue and the size of your teeth. Is it narrowing in general, becoming thin as the tip kind of started becoming a little pointier? We all have different shaped tongues, so it's not always going to be the same for everybody. You know, are you hearing kind of a gagged sound? If you're hearing a gag sound, that's tongue root, especially. And there are lots of exercises that I have in those videos on how to eliminate that. I feel like we can work on tongue tension separately from the breath. And I know a lot of teachers would disagree with me, mostly because I think sometimes what happens is it becomes reflexive in our technique. It just becomes something that our tongues automatically do when we get to certain pitches or certain pitch ranges. And I don't think it's always because of the breath. I don't think it's always because something further on down the system is imbalanced. I think sometimes we have these unproductive helping behaviors. So for you, when you get to about C4, you may be sort of subconsciously attempting to stabilize the larynx by engaging your tongue root, tensing it. It's a really, really common issue with singers. I see it in a good majority of singers that I work with. When they first come to me, I can diagnose tongue root tension in a good majority of them. So I like to do things like just learning to be able to train the tongue to disengage. So one of the things is, just letting your tongue spread out over top of the bottom molars and the whole bottom set of teeth, and then gently biting down. And then phonating scales, sirens, even vocal phrases, the melodies of your vocal phrases from that. And what you'll find is when you get around to your C4, you may feel a sense of a tug of war between the front here that's being held relatively stable, the tongue's being kind of, I'll say, forced into a wider, fatter position and shape. And then that's when you may become really aware of what's happening at the back, at the tongue root area. You might actually be getting like that. You might feel that sense of like it's like a tug of war where you feel like that real tensing and pulling that you may not otherwise be aware of. So I do stuff like that. I do, if you're coming into your singing session already tense, then that's when I would do stretches and massages. I have a video on massages, one of which is to take your thumb and your finger and just go all the way back as far as you can with your tongue, and then pinch the tongue on the sides. I'm not going to do it because my hands aren't freshly washed. It'll taste terrible. And just sliding it forward in your tongue along those really long muscles along the side of the tongue. And you'll feel like when I do that, I tend to feel like it's like when somebody's massaging your back and it's like you don't even realize how tense you are. It's that kind of like sore, but like a good sore. So, you could do that, and you could do those long, sticking your tongue out type exercises, which I won't get into because it'll wreck my lipstick, as I discovered in my video on that. But yeah, stuff like that. I would start with like massaging, tensing, but then work on retraining the tongue, getting rid of that tensing reflex when you get to that pitch, because at this point it's probably so reflexive. At this point, it's just so automatic. It's such muscle memory for your tongue that it's going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again every time, no matter what you change with the breath and other aspects of your technique. All right, 40. Sorry, wondering about techniques. Any suggestions? I'm not sure what the 40 is, Ian. I studied speech level singing and it helped a lot, but still problems with tension. Is that? Did I miss something? Oh, top 40. Oh, now I know. All right, I see. It's a broken sentence here. It's good. Let's see. Any suggestions? Studied speech level singing and it helped a lot, but still problems with tension. Yeah, so again, the other thing that when it comes to tensions that I think we don't realize is that everything is so connected and our body alignment is critical. So you'll have some people who will disagree and they will say it makes no difference whatsoever. I can stick my head forward and I sound exactly the same as if I align my head correctly. I can raise my chin and it's not going to do anything. Functional MRIs will tell you a different story. They'll show you what happens when you just kind of, even just without even speaking, raise your chin and lower your chin, for example. You could find an MRI probably somewhere on YouTube, just with chin. I posted an MRI, functional MRI, on my Singways Facebook page a while back. It was really fascinating to see the height of the larynx and just how just small changes to the alignment can affect where the larynx sits inside the neck in relation to the cervical vertebrae. So sometimes it's just that we're putting tensions and strain on the muscles that are holding the larynx to where it is and positioning the larynx, and learning to be able to align our bodies correctly can actually alleviate a lot of that stress. So I would take a look at your body alignment, take a look at that first, because that's oftentimes like the thing that will solve 50% of issues. I'm just throwing stats out here, but it really is critical for a lot of singers. Some singers don't really notice much of a difference, and especially I think when you get to a point later on in your singing where your technique is stable and it's consistent and reliable, you may find that you can move a little further away from ideal or optimal body alignment without it making a significant difference. But early on, I think it's a good idea to really establish a good body alignment with that, the body having the curves where it's supposed to have the curves. Most of us are, have that head forward posture. I am just as guilty, if not worse than others. We have a head forward posture. We're used to having our back neck muscles being really stretched and having to do a lot of work trying to yank that head back, while the muscles in the front of the neck are really, really tense. So I don't know what kind of tension you're talking about, Ian. If you're talking about throat tension, neck tension, if you're talking about jaw or tongue, makes a difference. But I think, again, a lot of it goes back to, first of all, holding our instruments properly, aligning our bodies correctly. And then when we do that, that fixes the imbalances, and that relieves some of the stress that is being placed on the different muscles of the body, some of which may seem like they're not at all related to singing because they're not necessarily directly in the throat or the neck, but they do impact our singing. And I have a video on body alignment, and a video on dealing with suprahyoid tensions, the muscles that are right in the chin area. And I talk about this idea of that stretching these muscles here and finding release in these muscles so that we can actually get a better alignment. It's not sometimes just a matter of standing up straight, because sometimes we don't have the muscle memory in place and the neural pathways in place to be able to stand up straight. Not that we stand up straight, there's a curve in our spines. So I don't know, just take a look at those things that seem like they're not really that important, because sometimes they are. Let's see, Iman. Let me know if I'm pronouncing your name properly. Imam, maybe. Let me know. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. I apologize. I think it's fine for me. My diction was fine until like some words that are hard to pronounce. Sometimes my own language diction got in the way when I pronounced something similar to my native language. Yes. And that's actually what I addressed in this video, because so what often happens is that non-native English speakers attempt to apply the rules of their language to English, and that never works. I always use the example of, something like Spanish, where they have, only a handful of vowels, whereas in English we have some 16 to 20 vowels depending on the speaker and the region. And so oftentimes non-native English speakers will attempt to sing the vowels as they would sing them within the limited scope of their language. And the result is a foreign accent that just keeps intruding on their singing. And so in order to kind of erase your diction, you have to learn, first of all, to be able to distinguish between the different vowel sounds that we have in English that you maybe don't have in your language, and then how to shape your mouth appropriately for those particular sounds, and your jaw, your mouth, your lips, and your tongue, and also to some extent your throat, but you don't really usually think about that when you're pronouncing things. But learning to be able to make those sounds, and then really listening to the original singer and analyzing what that singer is doing with his or her vowels, and also consonants to some extent. Sometimes we have consonants that are different from language to language, how hard we pronounce a given consonant, or like our R's, for example, different types of R's in different languages. So I think that's the big thing, is not attempting to apply your language rules to English, because it's not the same language. So when you really listen to a native English speaker singing, analyze what he or she is doing with those vowels and with those consonants, and really attempt to learn how to pronounce those sounds as that singer is pronouncing them, not as you are. One of the other trappings I think that singers get into is that they tend to read the sheet music or the lyric sheets. And when they do that, it triggers something inside them, because they're looking at a given symbol for a vowel, for example, and all they know to do is to pronounce that vowel a certain way. So that's why I think sometimes ditching the lyric sheets and just listening and really analyzing what vowel is being sung at that particular point can be really, really critical and really helpful. Where are you? Samuel, nice to see you. I'm so happy to see you again. How are you? Have you been any new interesting artists lately? which you love. I don't know about new. I don't know about new. I've just been listening to, a lot of musical theater stuff in the van as we drive. Still, I was listening to yesterday. We hadn't listened to it in a few weeks, but I was listening to A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, and every time I listen to it, I find Bryce Pinkham's voice very dreamy. I could just listen to it all day. So, yeah, but other than that, nothing new. Jean, aloha. Oh, Jean, I didn't know that you were in Hawaii. Wow. Huh. So you're like 6 hours difference from me. So hello. Nice to see you. Singy Mix Singer Pants. Hello. I know you. Yeah, you're in Hawaii as well. And you recommend a warm up exercise for agility. Sure. I think of this. I think my piano. Excuse me. So with agility, we start with first of all stretching the instrument. So I wouldn't say just one exercise. It depends on how warmed up you are. But essentially, I would start with things like sirens that take you from the bottom of your range to the top of your range, like really stretch those vocal folds and come back down. I think that's the first thing. And with agility too, before we get to the exercises, I like to make sure that I'm not bringing up too much vocal weight. I think that's critical. If you weigh your voice down too much, it's just going to be sluggish and it's not going to move. So I think sometimes starting in things like, going up above the break area, starting in head voice, and working your way down is really helpful. But there are, I've got that exercise. I love to sing. I love to sing. And I would do that. You can pick up the pace a little bit, the tempo, and sing it a little bit faster. But it's just making your voice move a little bit. I've got a few other exercises that I don't think I've shared them on here. I know I do them with students, but yeah, I think honestly the other exercises that I like to do is just to take like an R&B song, for example, and just take a run or riff that is being sung there and sing that in different keys and using that as kind of, a real life application, I guess. But the I love to sing is kind of my go-to, but there's another exercise that's a combination of agility and intervallic training and all sorts of stuff. Let's see. How long does it typically take to warm up? Thanks. Yeah, so I think how long we warm up depends on the individual. Generally speaking, singers with naturally weightier instruments, more dramatic instruments, will take longer than a lighter or lyric instrument, such as myself. So that makes a difference. I think the time of the day makes a big difference for me. I had to lead worship on Friday, Friday morning at the co-op that I attend, like the homeschool co-op, with my kids, and it's rough for me in the mornings. I have gunk from my allergies overnight, and by that point I've only been using my voice a little bit, for like an hour and a half or something. But by the time I have to lead, and I if it's morning, I need hours. I feel like to really get. I mean, not just singing per se, but just using my voice, talking and inflecting my voice and that sort of thing. Whereas if I wait until later in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, for example, after I've been working with students and talking to my kids and such, I need virtually no warm up. I can jump right into just about any kind of singing, including belting. And I think that's true of a lot of singers. It's not that you're not warming up your voice. And I'm not going to say don't warm up your voice because it really depends on who you are and how elastic your voice is and how naturally weighty your voice is. I know your voice, and it's not like a really heavy instrument. Um, and I've heard you sing at 6:30 in the morning for you, and you did impressively well for somebody who probably hadn't been up for that long. So without really weighing your voice down a lot, which is great. But I wouldn't say, I guess I'm kind of saying this in a roundabout way, that there's really no hard and fast rule when it comes to warming up. And I have a video on warming up as well. The rules for me when it comes to warming up are just not to take your voice to any extremes in pitch or intensity or quality, like distortion and that sort of thing, immediately. So give your voice time to be able to stretch fully, And again, for me, if I'm working with students, sometimes I'm demonstrating things in different parts of my range. So I'm kind of doing that, but I'm just doing it in little spurts throughout the day. So if you add it all up, it depends on, I guess, what time of day it is, how long I'm actually warming up. um, does that answer your question, Matt? So let's see. Just got rid of your anonymity. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what the comic relief is. I don't know if that was related to my children. They interrupt me a lot. All right, Justin, thank you so much. Oh, you're very welcome. Jean, use the straw between sets all the time. Yes, that's another great thing too, especially if you're somebody who does deal with a lot of tensions and just you're working through vocal issues, vocal health issues. I encourage my students to keep a straw in their vehicles when they're driving, and just to kind of use that as part of even a warm up before they use their voices. Some of my students will do straw phonation on their way to gigs. It's a great time to do that because you don't have people around you and all the chaos of trying to set things up and do sound checks and whatever else. They can just kind of phonate, and it's not really disturbing people too much. It looks a little strange, but I would say, yeah, do straw phonation a few times a day. Even just a few sirens or something can go a long way. Let's see. T42. Hi. Nice to see you. I'm not sure if you've ever been on one of these live streams, but welcome if you haven't, and welcome if you have to. Let's see. Love your Q&A videos. Oh, great. Hi from Paris. Hello. The weather was windy today and a little rainy. My question is, how can I enhance my speaking voice as I am quite consistent lyrical head voice? Thank you. So you're saying your speaking voice. Are you saying that you speak up in the head voice area, like you're higher voiced in your speech as well, like you're speaking in like an M2? Let me know if that's what you're referring to. How can I enhance my speaking voice as a quite consistent lyrical head voice, or to make it as consistent? I'm not sure. Would you mind reiterating that? Just explaining what you're asking again, please. And I'll come back to you. Samuel, do you have any special imagery to help with releasing tongue root? Any technique? I was here when you talked about it a moment ago. I just want to milk it. Yeah, that's okay. I actually love talking about this topic because it is such a common thing. So I honestly, the biggest things for me is just the techniques really are stretching and massaging. Especially if you're feeling the tensions before you're even starting your singing session. And then beyond that, for me, in terms of imagery, I use that imagery before of like a little miniature ball that's kind of like like the tongue is sort of, if you're rolling the tongue forward on, like it's like kind of rolling on top of this ball where it keeps its curve, for example, and you think of the tongue as sort of rolling forward, and that gets it up out of the throat space and leaning up against the front wall of the throat. And I've used that kind of imagery, but the other thing is just kind of like fat and wide, this idea of just sort of letting it spread like a blanket over top of the molars at the back and the lower set of teeth in general. But other than that, just the biting the tongue and learning to phonate with the tongue in that position. Also, even just sticking it out a little bit between the lips. And I also like using the at-rest position, where you essentially line the roof of the mouth, like you're wallpapering the roof of the mouth with your tongue. And then you do this when your mouth is closed. And then you let the jaw lower just a little bit. So my tongue is still lining the roof of the mouth when I do that. So I'm keeping the tongue in that higher fronted position. I'm humming through that, obviously. But again, it's one of those things that just kind of things that retrains the tongue to become disengaged. When you're singing a scale on a given vowel sound, there's no need for your tongue to become engaged. The tongue positions itself. Yes, dear. No. Thank you. So the idea is to sort of teach it not to engage when it doesn't need to engage. And then also to teach it to learn how to use the right amount of contraction for a given speech sound. Because sometimes when singers are working through consonants especially, and the tongue has to move, they grip too much, and they use these, they use a little too much muscle and force to try to get the tongue to behave, and then the tongue actually becomes sluggish, and then they have difficulties with diction and just that clarity there. So I guess for me, that's just the big thing is learning to be able to disengage the tongue when you're singing a vowel sound or when you're humming. When you're singing the same sound, you're not having to change the position of the tongue. And yeah, and using mirrors. Mirrors are great too. Let's see, mistake from a previous text. Let's see, you're right. I sit at a piano with a stationary mic. Yeah, throat tension. Cool, thanks. Yeah. Let me know if there's something I have not answered of yours. Let's see. Yes, the letter was correct. You pronounced correctly. Oh, imam, right, with the E sound. I think so. That's what I said. Hi, Matt. Oh, Janet's just saying hi to Matt. Robert, any tips for dealing with sinus congestion for singers who hate chemical products? That's a good one. So yeah, I think the big thing is hydration, because when you're hydrating, you're thinning all that mucus, which means that it can clear out faster. It can get out of the sinus cavities. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Sorry. I asked them earlier not to interrupt me during my live stream, and yet they have multiple times. All right. Let's see. So yeah, so I think any kind of hydration, so making sure that the air itself is hydrated, so that you're using, a humidifier would be ideal. Also, making sure that you're hydrating with water will keep things moving a little bit easier, and you're less likely to stay as congested. I don't know if you're talking about a cold or if you're talking about things like allergies, so if it's a chronic thing. And then the other thing too would be for you to do like nasal irrigation and just rinsing out, especially if you have congestion from things like allergies. If you're rinsing out some of the foreign particles that are entering into the nasal cavities before they get into your system, that can be really beneficial. Um, that being said, I mean, there are natural ways that you can use. You can use like natural menthol and things like um, natural oils, essential oils. There you go. I'm looking at my head. I'm thinking oils, but I couldn't think of essential oils. So you can also use like mint and other essential oils too. And I'm not an expert on essential oils, but if you talk to somebody from like DoTerra or something, I'm sure like your local DoTerra representative would be helpful with that. But I would encourage you to maybe try something if you're looking for something more natural. Try a natural oil, an essential oil. Oh, let's see. Just here this week, try not to miss these. Oh, good. Yeah, I know I only do them once a month, but I'm going to start doing them a little bit more often. Maybe a couple times a month. I might throw something in during the week, because it does get to become a lot when I'm only doing this once a month, and then we end up going for an hour, sometimes as long as an hour and a half before. So let's see here. It always happens. I try to scroll and then I miss half of these. I used Hydrosense all the time, just light salt water and nasal spray. Yeah, so it's just or like a saline solution kind of thing is what most of those nasal irrigation systems are, like the neti pots. You just take a saline solution and you just drip it in there. I personally don't do well with that. I end up swallowing half of it. Um, so it's just the way I'm set up. For some reason, there's something funky about my own anatomy that everything just goes post nasal for me. So when I get a cold, I don't actually get a stuffy nose or runny nose. I never have to blow my nose. It just drips down behind. It's like really awful. So let's see. Robert, silence rinse. Neti pot. Oh, so you mentioned neti pot as well. It's great for singers with sinus issues. Also staying away from the inflammatory foods. Yes, exactly. Yeah, inflammatory foods are a good thing to avoid as well. I do notice that when I'm dealing with more systemic inflammation, that I also tend to get inflammation in my nasal passages. So sometimes it feels like it's stuffy, but there's no mucus in there. I know it's not stuffy from mucus. It's just stuffy from inflammation. So that's a really, really good point. Singing makes singer pants. I still love your name. Robert, thanks. Ian, I've tried saline wash is not great. Yeah, see, I agree, Robert. I don't have a lot of I've tried it a few times and it just never really worked for me, but I do find that if I hydrate more, it's better. One of the things I'm on allergy medications year round because I haven't found anything that's a good solution. I have an appointment coming up actually to see if I can find a better solution for it. So it tends to thicken up that mucus. So I have to really counter that with a lot of hydrating in the air and hydrating internally. That really helps a lot. Let's see. Oh, saying hi to Janet. Everybody loves Janet. Janelle. Hi, forgot that you were coming on today. Oh, well, nice to have you join us. It's all right. If you have any questions, I'll say you haven't missed much, but we've been going for a while. But there's still time for questions if you want to ask anything. T42. So I used to speak in my head voice, and now I try to speak in a more powerful chest voice. Okay, that's a good. I don't know if you're male or female, because sometimes I've actually worked with some singers who speak in their head voice in their M2, and learning to be able to access that chest voice is really important. And I find sometimes just doing some like more primitive primal kind of sounds like the and just getting used to that feeling of vocal fry even uh, uh, and allowing the voice to just not thinking singing, not thinking speech, where we tend to want to control the sound more. I will use that with some singers, like just a energized hum that feels like it's kind of here, not here. That can really strengthen things quite a bit. And I find that twang, if you bring twang into the lower range, that really, really helps a lot because it prevents us from getting too dark and like a foghorn when we're trying to build a chest voice. But yeah, that's what I would do for speech is working through just accessing it first of all, learning to be able to access that at will, even if you have to try to trick your body a little bit um, by doing these kind of primal like grunting and those kinds of sounds can really help a lot. And then you cultivate that sound, then you refined that sound more. Let's see. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Hi. Am I too late? Oh, hi, Matt. No, you're not too late. I'm going to be wrapping up in a few minutes, but if you have questions, please let me know. I know you've always got questions. Samuel, though. Why was my message deleted? Oh, I was just paying tribute. So maybe it was Janet who deleted your message. What did you say? All right. Imam, can I request something? I really want to hear you sing. The only time heard you sing yourself is in your self-assessment video. Yes, I am working on trying to buy some proper recording equipment. As those of you who taken private lessons with me have discovered that I can't sing using the mic on my laptop because it just cuts right out and you can't hear anything. So anybody who's had private lessons with me online, or even if you've been in SingWise Academy, it's not a good thing. It just cuts right out. Even if I just try to play the piano lightly. So I'm working on getting a better like an external mic and hopefully a recording mic, and I'm working on that. I'm working on it. Janelle, with the weather flip-flopping, oh my gosh, it's almost 80 degrees here in October in the northeast. It's very weird. Yeah. I don't know where you are, but it's definitely been flip-flopping a lot here for us. It is having an effect on my voice, seems to take longer to warm up and not exactly scratchy, maybe a little itchy. Yep. Any suggestions on how to minimize the effects? Yeah. So, I mean, I find that not everybody's equally as affected by the rapid changing of the temperatures and such. But again, I think the big thing is when the heat comes on, as it has for us already. It was coming on last week. Just to make sure that you're also bringing your humidifier into the room and keeping that. We keep a house humidifier on each floor. It's a whole floor humidifier, like a big sucker. We have one on each floor of their house, and as soon as the heat starts kicking in or turning on, we start turning on the humidifiers, and that I find makes a big difference. And then We've actually had to turn on the AC this week, not so much because it was really unbearably hot, but because it was getting really humid and it was a little too humid for comfort. So I guess the only thing that you can really do is try to regulate the humidity in the air as much as possible. That will make a big difference, I think. Um, and yeah, as far as the warming up, I'm not. Yeah, I think really the humidity is a huge thing. Yeah, hopefully that helps. See, I think the message you mentioned is still there. Yeah, somebody's message was deleted. It was retracted, it said, so I'm not sure. Samuel, I said I love your streams and that you should not be hard on your kids for interrupting you. I love your attitude and I respect all your work and knowledge. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's just trying to balance like family life and work life is really really tough, and I just like I wish sometimes my kids would respect that, like mommy's at work right now, you don't go to daddy's office and interrupt him, do you? Well, no, because he's not home. Well, pretend I'm at work. So they just don't get the concept at all. It's funny. Never change. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and you're in Louisville. Okay, so one day 80. Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's funny that you're even in Kentucky. I thought you would have been like a little bit warmer, but that's what we've been at too. Same thing. Today's almost 80 degrees, and then a couple days ago, exactly, it was in the 50s, high 50s. So it's same kind of flip floppy weather here for sure. What is low F on the keyboard? Hmm. I'm wondering if you're talking about like, oh, so you're saying on the keyboard. I'd have to think about that. So it's probably like F1, isn't it? I don't have my like piano open. I'm like, I'd have to count down. So if you count down from your middle C being C4, so the F below that, C4 is F3, right? So then you've got an F2 below that. There should be an F1, right? I'm not a pianist, people. I'm not a pianist. I think F2. It could be F2. Um, excuse me just a moment. I'm going to go check on my piano. I'll be right back. F2 is not, it's actually F1, sorry. So there's, yeah, because there's the F below middle C, and then there's the F2, and then there's an F1, and then there are a few notes below that. So that's what it is. It's an F1. All right, so there you go. I'm going to ask about primal sounds. That was interesting. Lower primal sounds, as I always think of the higher ones, the higher calling sounds. Yeah, to access a mix rather than go up too heavy. Sofa stream. Yeah. Why my voice teacher stops me with low F. Well, I mean, I think if you're Matt, if your singing teacher is stopping you with that low F, it could just be because maybe she hears something in how you're producing that sound that maybe isn't 100% balanced. So it doesn't make sense to keep going further if you're just kind of going to be dragging down further imbalance. So I don't always take my singers to the highest notes and the lowest notes that they can sing. If I feel as though there's some imbalance there, it doesn't make sense to do that. So we stop where the balance, the last notes where I feel like, before we get to the point where we're reinforcing the poor balances, if that helps. See, the primal sounds, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I just kind of, yeah, like we can do, you're right, Janet. Sometimes we use it for like higher things like, ow, like when we're like expressing like pain or discomfort. But for me, like just like the grunt, it's not like a great singing coordination to be grunting, right? Because it's usually like a little too hard in here. But I was really referring more to somebody who really struggles to access the lower range completely. I mean, we're talking like normal speech inflection range where the individual is actually speaking up in head voice on a regular basis, as opposed to speaking in chest voice, which is what the vast majority of us do. So learning to be able to kind of, and I like to do like a descending kind of patterns as well. Sometimes walking down really helps. But just, I find that once the singer learns to access that chest voice, it actually really helps to strengthen all the notes above that. I'm not talking about dragging up vocal weight, but being able to find the chest voice. I too find it can prevent you remember I was talking earlier about the distortions when singers sometimes do these singeries, vowels, they put on these little affectations. And I feel like some of that is sort of this, they do it unintentionally, and it happens because they're not accessing any kind of chest voice, so their vowels always, even in speech, sound a little bit distorted. So it can really help a lot with that. I get these two confused. What is the range for second soprano as opposed to first soprano? So first soprano is a little higher, and second soprano is a little lower. But I mean, not every choir divides it into that. Some just have, your alto, which is your typical like mezzo soprano singing it. But usually, when you hear like a one in a choir part, it's usually the higher part, especially when it comes to soprano. So, is that, yeah? Hopefully that answers what you're asking there. Yeah. So first soprano is higher usually. Let's see. Confused. How much longer will you be on? I'm actually going to be, I think, calling it a day in just a couple minutes, Matt. So I've got some cleaning I have to get done today. I have my father-in-law coming next weekend, and I probably should organize. Probably be gone for 20 minutes. Yeah, so we're going to be off probably when you come back, Matt. Any other questions before we go? And like I said, I'm going to try to do this a little bit more often, and I think I'm going to try to post a poll for you guys that I would really like to get some of your thoughts on something that I'm trying to get. Can you demonstrate? Is that twang? I'm assuming is it a W that you meant to press? Let's see how. Yeah, W's and E's are very close together on the typewriter. Keyboard. I'm dating myself. Yeah, so if it's twang that you're asking, just Robert, clarify. Just make sure, please. So if it's twang that you're talking about, it's just really a bright sound. So I have actually right now, I'm using a little bit of twang in my speaking voice. My natural voice does not have twang, but I've learned to kind of add it into my sound so that my voice carries better. It's got more clarity. It's a very subtle, yes, it's a very subtle version of twang. But when I start teaching students twang, I start with like that baby's cry, wah, 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 wah. Really, really bright sound, right? And it's got this like laser focus in the sound. And that's the starting place. It's not the finished sound. But if the student can find that particular laser focus, bright kind of sound, then we can find we can kind of adjust the degree, the amount of twang in the sound and the brightness in it to match what we're singing. And I feel like just sometimes if we are taking the lyrics of the song and we just try to sing through it, so we speak it on pitch, just like we're singing, but we focus on speaking it. What happens is we get a natural twang in the voice. If we think about our diction and we think about trying to make it, I know, James, I'm sorry, I am going to get an external microphone. So you probably experienced that, right, where you couldn't hear me again for a little bit after I demonstrated it. Yeah, it's just bad. It's bad. I'm sorry. So yeah, so primal right there. So yeah, if you start with that and you get that feeling of focus, that feeling of like for me, I feel like it's in this like little pocket. It just sits in a certain place. And then depending on what I'm singing, I will use more or less twang. So if I'm in musical theater and so much of the storyline is conveyed through the song, then I want to make sure that I'm telling the story and I'm using a little bit more twang and more speech-like qualities. Whereas if I'm singing pop or rock, I don't need quite as much twang, but if I don't have any twang at all, I find that I get really back sounding really dull. My voice doesn't carry. Glottal closure is a little bit more difficult. So let's see. Janelle, this is so interesting to me, is second soprano exercises their voice to the same higher pitches. It is more the range where they sing more comfortably. Tessitura comes into it. Yes, Janet. Yeah, Janet has a fair bit of choir background too, right, Janet? So she would also be a good resource for you to talk about that. But let's see, great interviews with the mezzo soprano. There are 2 of them. Yeah. Oh, are we talking about the interview with Michelle Breet, who's a mezzo, and she makes a great point that mezzo soprano, that soprano is actually in the name, so we can definitely go up as high as a soprano can, but the question is, do we want to sit there? Is that our home? And for mezzo, it's not our tessitura, our home. So I am defined as a soprano in my choir, but I can sing quite low, chesty, and I can also hit quite a few higher notes as well. Feel most comfortable higher. Yeah, see, and I think that's a really important thing to consider is that, oh yes, that's her name, Michelle Breed. Yeah, so I'm like all over the place today. So the important thing to consider, yeah, is where you feel comfortable, where your voice feels like the most energized. I think if you're sitting in the wrong tessitura for a long period of time, your voice will tend to fatigue a little bit more readily. And so, yeah, you just want to be where you're comfortable. And if higher is where you're comfortable, where your voice just seems to kind of stay energized for longer, then that's where you belong. For me, that's not where I belong. And I know that. And knowing that helps to inform my decisions with regard to repertoire and key signatures. And that's really the important thing of just knowing your voice. It's not that you're trying to be pigeonholed. It's not that you're trying to, label your voice per se. It's just kind of having an understanding of where your voice likes to sit and spend most of its time. That's most important. High and descant high, high S and descant high. Oh, high as. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to translate. Oh dear. Okay, maybe it might be time for me to go. My brain's not working. Why, when I sing in head voice, I can feel my neck and jaw like suddenly tense, even in the very comfortable range. Again, as we were talking earlier, I think it's probably reflexive. It could be there from a time when maybe it wasn't so comfortable and it just became habit. I What I find is I see in a lot of singers and they don't realize they're doing it. And then I record a lot of my lessons with students. I use Zoom video conferencing, and we're able to record the lessons. The student records the lesson. I record the lesson sometimes, depending on the student. And I always encourage them to play it back. And when I point something out, I say, go play it back and watch what I'm talking about here, because we're not aware of what's happening. But I will oftentimes see singers will do this when they get to high notes. They'll reach and they'll put their head forward, and that is immediately going to place more stress on the muscles of the neck. So what you may be doing is unwittingly trying to help your high notes come out by doing things like tensing and changing the shape of your vocal tract by changing your alignment, your body alignment. So I would look at that first. I'd watch yourself singing. You'd almost be better off actually video recording yourself, because when you're in front of a mirror, sometimes you'll change the behaviors, which eventually you do want to do, but you'll kind of change the behaviors and you won't be as natural. But if you sit there and just record your whole practice session and watch it back, I think it could be quite telling and quite revealing of what you actually do, what your typical habits are that you may not be aware of. Everything from things like, how you're changing for high notes, how you're changing things here, to your facial expressions. Like I notice sometimes singers will tend to kind of furrow the brow, or they'll do different things. They'll spread this way when they get to high notes, and they try to help the sound, the higher notes, in unproductive ways. And it's possible that that's what you're doing there, is just the reflex that you have to try to help. Let's see. No, wasn't trying to be labeled. Just can't ever keep the 2 straight. Oh yeah, that's fine. That's good. Do you think you hear good vocalists will help your body awareness? Like, do you mean like hearing good vocalists will help us? I don't think so. I think it's what will happen is we will listen to good vocalists and we will try to imitate them, but from inoptimal positions and postures and coordinations. So I think that we want to listen to them. Definitely, we want to be able to sort of reverse engineer the sounds that they're making and be able to learn to make those sounds, mimic them to some extent. But I think first of all, we have to take a look at what's unique to our bodies and how we're aligning our bodies ourselves. And yeah, that makes a big difference. Let's see, Janet, love to soar on the high notes. Yeah, so good. I like that you're chatting about choir stuff, the altos. That would be me. In sense, knowing something that you do is right or wrong. Oh, the body. Yeah. So when it comes to certain techniques, such as, let's say, belting, there are certain postures that are common with some belters. Certain positions of the mouth. We tend to open our mouths wider, for example. The tongue. Sometimes the tongue is higher and a little more back. And really watching if we there are different aesthetics with belt, for example, and certain singers will make a different belt sound. And so, for me, I don't like the tongue back kind of sound. I tend to like a tongue forward sound where it sounds a little more trumpet like. Um, and watching, I think, what they do in terms of how they're shaping the vowel with their tongues, with their jaws, with their lips, watching, how they anchor their sound with their bodies. What are they doing with their shoulders? What are they doing with their chest? I think when we do that, that can be beneficial. But again, what often happens when we're looking at other people is we tend to take things too far. So if I told you now, to, I don't know, open up your mouth more or something when you're singing, um, instead of just kind of going from here to there, you might go all the way, right? I find that singers very often do that. They don't have a sense of proprioception of how when you're making just really fine-tuned, minute changes to your vocal posture, we tend to kind of go too far because we don't have that sense of proprioception, that feeling of where our tongues are in space in our bodies, and that sort of thing. So I think it can be beneficial, but I think in the wrong hands, that kind of information can be taken the wrong way and misapplied. So yeah, I don't know what type of singer you are. If you're the type of singer who or individual who does tend to kind of take things a little too far when you're trying to apply them. So just, yeah, keep that in mind. All right, guys, it looks like the comment section is slowing down. Let's see, you have a very beautiful voice. Could children be taught to, oh, thank you, by the way. Could children be taught to speak using accurately their breath and twang, thus speaking more comfortably? Absolutely. I actually do work with speech clients. Usually they're adults and teens, not so much younger children, but that is actually part of when children go into speech therapy. That's part of what speech language pathologists do is they help them find more resonance. They help them work through what we call the aeromechanical aspects of singing. So aero being breath and mechanical being with, having to do with what they're doing up here in terms of bringing the vocal folds together, shaping their sounds, learning to be able to find a really nice balance there. And I know teachers like Arthur Lessac, I don't know, Lessac. He has a book on the use and training of the human voice, which is a really affordable book, and it's really good. It's got lots of speech exercises, and he talks about like the why buzz and the resonant voice. It's really his focus is to learn to be able to get that resonance, let the voice resonate in the right ways to get an effective carrying power and to be able to kind of get the feeling of work being out of here. But yeah, so Arthur Lessac, Lessac. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. The use and training of the human voice is a really good resource. I actually had a student a number of years ago recommend it to me. She said that she was going through it and she thought it was really, really helpful. So that's when I got that book. But there are lots of good speech exercises in there too, and it's really cool because he talks about the every single letter or every single sound that we make, every phoneme that we pronounce, he describes it as a certain orchestral instrument. So like the T is like I think he says the T is like the snare drum, how it's got kind of a higher pitch, and it's kind of like that. It's percussive. Talking about the plosives being percussive, and he's got snare drums, and he's got brass instruments and things like that, and describes. And it's kind of if you're an imagery person, sometimes it helps too to connect the proper kind of energy that to a sound that you're used to hearing with orchestral instruments. That's kind of cool. At some point, get comfortable with singing in front of strangers. That's always a fun thing, isn't it? Robert, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, guys, I am going to go. I'm going to go get some organizing done and make dinner for my kids. My husband is away at a funeral in Florida, actually. So he'll be home later tonight, and I really don't want him seeing a disaster when he gets back. Oh, see, in regards to vowel modification, is it better for the vocal tract to conform to classical sounds or modify our vowels from there, or modify our vowels from a more speech-like start? Good question, Dwight. I think it really depends on what you're doing. I think it depends on what you're singing. If you're singing something that leans a little bit more toward legit sound, legit musical theater, maybe some like Celtic music, those kinds of styles, maybe even some, I would say even some folk music, but I find oftentimes folk music also has that very speech-like element to it. I think that going to the classical space is good, whereas I feel like it's not necessary in other styles. That being said, I think it's always good for us to cross train. I think that if we can train our larynx to stay comfortably low, if we can train that space in our throats, then we know how to counter the voice becoming too constricted if it happens. We know how to avoid that from happening, even though when we're singing in other styles, the larynx is not going to be as low as it is in classical singing. The soft palate's not necessarily going to be as high. So I think it's a matter of cross training, and I think that can be beneficial to us. But it's not. It's obviously not the same coordination. So it's not just a matter of modifying vowels either, because there's a vowel shaping here, but there's also shaping that happens here with the larynx and the pharynx that is apart from the position of the tongue and the shape of the lips and the position of the jaw. Does that explain it? I'm not sure. So I think it depends on what you're singing. So when I'm doing musical theater, I start from speech. I don't start from, I mean, not legit musical theater or lyrical musical theater. If I'm doing lyrical, I start from this place that's kind of in between. It's sort of a pseudo classical. But yeah, other than that, I start from speech because that's just the clarity that I need, the twanginess that comes out. Can you also tell me how you highlight names like that? Oh, if you're trying to get somebody, you would do at, like do the at symbol and then start typing their name, and you'll probably see like the name start to pop up. All right. All right. Before we get more questions coming in, it was really good hanging out with you guys today. I hope I answered all your questions, and as usual, you're welcome to answer or ask questions when this gets posted on the channel, and let me know how you do. Thank you for all the information. Oh, thank you so much, Imam. It was nice having you here. I don't think that, yeah, is this your first time? I think it is. All right. Bye, James. I'll see you this week sometime, probably. somewhere in the interwebs. All right, guys. Have yourselves a great rest of the weekend and a great week. And like I said, I'm going to be working on getting some videos out to you again now that the camera's up and going and the mic seems to be cooperating with me. So we'll see. All right. Bye, everyone. And thank you, Janet, for helping out with the moderating and such. All right. Bye, guys.